Before you sweep away a dusty web in the corner of your garage, take a closer look at the creature hanging inside it. Most people see a harmless little spider and think nothing of it, but while your house sleeps, this long-legged hunter may be quietly removing insects, competing with other predators, and keeping an entire hidden world in balance. The surprising part is that almost nobody notices what happens after dark. And once you discover who shares these corners with it, you may never look at your garage the same way again. If you enjoy uncovering the secret lives of the creatures living right beside us, subscribe and join us for more hidden stories from the natural world. Walk into almost any garage late in the evening, and you will probably see one. It hangs quietly in a corner near an old shelf, above a workbench, or somewhere close to the ceiling where dust slowly gathers over the years. Most people barely notice it, and when they do, the reaction is usually the same. A quick glance, a small feeling of discomfort, then a broom, a vacuum, or a rolled-up newspaper. A few seconds later, the corner is empty again. But what most people never realize is that they may have just removed one of the most useful creatures living around their home. The interesting thing is that the daddy longlegs does not look impressive. It does not have bright colors. It does not build large webs across gardens. It does not make noise. Most of the time, it simply hangs there, almost completely still. So still, in fact, that it can seem lifeless. Yet this quiet appearance hides a completely different story. Because while people see a motionless animal, the garage around it is full of activity. During the day, the space may appear empty. Boxes sit untouched. Tools remain on the walls. Old bicycles gather dust. Nothing seems to move. But as evening arrives and the temperature begins to change, small creatures start appearing from places that are almost impossible to notice. Tiny flies drift through the air. Small moths emerge from dark corners. Beetles crawl beneath shelves. Mosquitoes search for resting places. What looks like an empty garage slowly becomes a living landscape, and somewhere above all of it hangs the daddy longlegs, waiting. The strange part is that it does not wait the way most hunters do. It does not chase. It does not stalk. It does not rush across the floor searching for prey. Instead, it lets the world come to it. At first, this may seem lazy, but nature rarely wastes energy without a reason. The less movement a hunter makes, the less attention it attracts, and in a place filled with cautious insects, remaining unnoticed can be a powerful advantage. If you watch closely, you may notice something unusual. The web itself often looks messy. Unlike the neat circular webs many people imagine when they think of spiders, these webs seem random and disorganized. Loose strands stretch in different directions. There is no obvious pattern, no beautiful design, no perfect symmetry. It almost looks unfinished. Yet that apparent mess is exactly what makes it effective. Tiny insects flying through a garage do not see a carefully designed trap. They simply drift into an invisible maze of silk. By the time they realize something is wrong, escape can become surprisingly difficult. But there is another detail that most people never notice. The daddy longlegs is not always hunting insects. Sometimes it is hunting other spiders. This is where the story becomes far more interesting. Many garages contain several kinds of spiders at the same time. Some build webs near windows. Others hide behind boxes. Some remain active on the floor. To us, they all look similar. But inside this hidden world, each species occupies its own territory. Competition is constant. Space is limited. Food is limited. Survival depends on finding opportunities whenever they appear, and occasionally those opportunities include another predator. Imagine a small spider sitting quietly in its own web. Everything seems normal. Then it feels a vibration. At first the vibration appears harmless, but something unexpected is approaching. Slowly and carefully, the daddy longlegs enters the area. What happens next can look almost unbelievable when viewed up close. The long-legged hunter uses its extraordinary reach to stay outside the danger zone while probing the web. It can test the situation from a safer distance than many other spiders. This simple advantage changes everything. Suddenly, the fragile creature that looked so vulnerable begins to seem far more capable than expected. Yet even this is only part of the story, because the real reason daddy longlegs survives so successfully has less to do with strength and more to do with patience. Hours may pass without movement. Entire evenings can go by with almost no visible activity. To human eyes, nothing appears to be happening, but hidden within that stillness is constant awareness. Every vibration matters. Every movement in the web carries information. Every tiny disturbance tells a story about what may be approaching. In a way, the web becomes an extension of the animal itself, a network of invisible signals stretched across the darkness. And this is the moment when an ordinary garage starts looking very different. The shelves are no longer just shelves. The corners are no longer empty corners. What seemed like unused space is actually home to countless interactions happening every night. Predators searching for prey, insects searching for food, competitors avoiding one another. Tiny dramas unfolding completely unnoticed by the people living only a few feet away. Most of us close the garage door and never think about it again. But after sunset, another world quietly wakes up. And hanging near the ceiling, almost invisible against the shadows, the daddy longlegs remains exactly where it has been all day, watching, waiting, listening through strands of silk for the next vibration that will reveal itself in the darkness. And the deeper you look into its life, the stranger this familiar creature begins to become. The more scientists began studying these quiet animals, the more surprising details they uncovered. At first glance, a daddy longlegs seems almost unfinished. Its body appears small compared to its impossibly long legs. It looks fragile, delicate, almost too thin to survive in a world filled with larger predators. Yet this appearance can be misleading. In nature, survival is not always about strength. Sometimes it is about using the environment in ways that other creatures cannot. One of the first things people notice when they disturb a daddy longlegs is a strange trembling motion. Suddenly, the entire animal begins vibrating so rapidly that it becomes difficult to see clearly. The legs blur, the body seems to disappear into motion. To us, it may look like panic. But there is more happening than most people realize. Many predators rely on accuracy. They need to know exactly where their target is before striking. The rapid shaking makes that task much harder. Instead of seeing a clear shape, an attacker sees confusion, a moving blur, a target that becomes difficult to judge. It is a simple trick, yet it works surprisingly well. And this tiny defensive behavior reveals something important. The daddy longlegs is not merely surviving by accident. It has developed solutions to problems that have existed for millions of years. The longer you look at these creatures, the more examples you find. Consider their legs. Most people assume the long legs exist only for movement, but they serve many purposes at once. They help detect vibrations. They help navigate complex surfaces. They help keep distance from danger. They allow the animal to interact with prey while reducing risk to its own body. In a sense, each leg acts almost like an extension of its awareness. A daddy longlegs can gather information from the world around it without getting too close. This becomes especially useful inside garages, basements, sheds, and other enclosed spaces where encounters with different insects happen constantly. Yet perhaps the most fascinating part of the story involves communication. Not communication in the way humans think about it, but communication through touch and vibration. Imagine living in near darkness. Imagine having limited vision. Sound provides little information. The air remains mostly silent. How do you understand what is happening around you? For many web-building creatures, the answer is vibration. Every strand of silk becomes part of a giant sensory system. A trapped insect creates one pattern. A falling piece of dust creates another. A potential mate creates something entirely different. To us, these vibrations are invisible. To the daddy longlegs, they can carry valuable information about the surrounding world. The web is not just a trap. It is also a source of knowledge. And this changes how we should think about those dusty corners. What appears abandoned may actually be full of signals and activity. Tiny messages moving through strands of silk every second of the night. But there is another detail hidden inside these webs that many people never notice. The web itself is rarely permanent. Unlike some spiders that carefully maintain highly organized structures, daddy longlegs often create loose networks that can change over time. New strands appear. Old strands disappear. The structure adapts to conditions. It responds to the environment around it. This flexibility may be one reason these animals are so successful in human spaces. Garages change. Basements change. Storage rooms change. Objects move. Temperatures shift. Air currents come and go. A rigid strategy would struggle in such an environment. A flexible one can thrive. Nature often rewards adaptability more than perfection, and adaptability may be one of the daddy longlegs' greatest strengths. Still, none of this explains why they are so commonly found around people. For that answer, we need to think about something else entirely: food. Human structures accidentally create ideal conditions for many insects. Lights attract flying bugs. Small openings provide shelter. Stored items create hiding places. Moisture collects in certain areas. Where insects gather, predators eventually follow. Not because they are interested in humans, but because they are interested in the opportunities humans unintentionally create. In many ways, the garage becomes a miniature ecosystem. The insects are not random visitors. The spiders are not random visitors. Everything is connected through food, shelter, temperature, and survival. The daddy longlegs simply occupies one part of that larger system. And when it disappears, the effects may be more noticeable than people expect. Of course, most homeowners never observe this process directly. The activity happens slowly, quietly, night after night. One insect here, another there, small changes accumulating over time. Yet this hidden work is taking place whether anyone notices or not. What makes it even more fascinating is that the daddy longlegs is often sharing its space with creatures that are following completely different survival strategies. Some rely on speed, others rely on camouflage. Some hunt actively, others wait in ambush. Every corner contains multiple stories unfolding at the same time, and occasionally those stories intersect in unexpected ways. In fact, some of the most unusual encounters involve animals that are supposed to be dangerous predators themselves, creatures that other insects avoid, creatures that seem perfectly capable of defending themselves. Yet even they sometimes become part of the daddy longlegs story. And once researchers began documenting these interactions, a far stranger picture started to emerge. Because the quiet hunter hanging in your garage corner may be capable of things that seem completely out of proportion to its delicate appearance. The next layer of the story reveals just how deceptive first impressions can be. One of the most persistent myths about daddy longlegs is that they are weak, harmless creatures surviving only because nobody pays attention to them. The reality is much more interesting. Hidden inside their quiet lives are behaviors that seem almost impossible when you first hear about them. Some researchers studying garages, basements, caves, storage buildings, and other sheltered spaces began noticing something unusual. Certain webs contained remains that did not belong to ordinary flying insects. Instead, they found evidence of encounters with other predators, sometimes much larger predators. At first, this seemed strange. After all, how could such a delicate-looking creature successfully deal with animals that appear stronger, faster, or better equipped for hunting? The answer lies in a combination of patience, positioning, and a body design that turns apparent weakness into an advantage. Imagine entering a room filled with invisible tripwires. Every step carries risk. Every movement can reveal your location. Now imagine one creature knows exactly where those tripwires are while another does not. Suddenly, size becomes less important. Strength becomes less important. Information becomes everything. The daddy longlegs often operates in exactly this kind of environment. It understands its web because it built it. Every strand serves a purpose. Every vibration provides clues. An intruder entering that space may already be at a disadvantage before any direct encounter begins. But the truly fascinating part is how these encounters unfold. Instead of rushing toward danger, the daddy longlegs often approaches cautiously. Its extremely long legs allow it to investigate while keeping its body farther away from potential threats. This creates a protective buffer. A dangerous prey item may react violently, but the hunter remains at a safer distance than many other spiders could manage. It is a simple feature, yet it changes the entire interaction. Nature sometimes creates extraordinary results through surprisingly simple solutions. And this is only where things begin to get strange. Some observations have shown daddy longlegs feeding on insects that other predators actively avoid. Creatures with powerful defenses. Creatures equipped with strong jaws, chemical sprays, or hard protective shells. This does not mean the daddy longlegs always wins. Nature offers no guarantees, but it does reveal an unexpected level of adaptability. Instead of specializing in only one kind of prey, these animals often take advantage of whatever opportunities appear around them. a garage fly, a wandering beetle, a trapped moth, another spider. The menu can be surprisingly diverse, and this flexibility may explain why they thrive in so many different environments. Yet perhaps the most remarkable part of their story has nothing to do with hunting at all. It involves family. Most people never spend enough time observing a daddy longlegs to notice this side of their lives. But among certain species, parental care plays an important role. Eggs are not simply abandoned and forgotten. Protection matters, survival matters, the next generation matters. When we think about insects and spiders, it is easy to imagine cold and mechanical behavior. Yet nature often contains more complexity than we expect. Even tiny animals may invest significant effort into protecting offspring. This hidden side of their lives rarely appears in casual observations. You have to look closely. You have to spend time watching, and most people never do. The result is that an entire world remains invisible. Another surprising detail emerges when scientists examine how these creatures coexist with one another. At first glance, a garage corner may seem occupied by a single spider. In reality, it can be part of a much larger community. Multiple generations may occupy nearby spaces. Different species may share the same structure. Tiny insects live within the web. Microorganisms cover surfaces. What appears to be one animal hanging quietly in a corner is actually connected to an entire network of life. And this network extends far beyond the garage itself. The insects entering through open doors connected to gardens and fields. Wind carries tiny organisms from surrounding areas. Seasonal changes alter which species appear and disappear. The garage becomes a crossroads where outdoor ecosystems meet human spaces. The daddy longlegs simply happens to be one of the most visible residents, but visibility does not mean importance. Many of the most important interactions remain hidden. The strange thing is that once you start noticing these connections, it becomes difficult to stop seeing them. A single web becomes evidence of countless relationships. Every trapped insect represents a story that began somewhere else. Every vibration carries information from outside the corner where the spider hangs. Everything is connected through movement, energy, and survival. And occasionally these connections reveal something even stranger. Researchers have documented situations where daddy longlegs occupied locations for long periods, quietly shaping the local balance of insects around them. Not through dramatic action, not through large numbers, simply through steady presence, night after night, week after week. Small influences accumulating over time. It is a reminder that nature often works through gradual processes rather than sudden events. The biggest effects are not always the most visible ones. But perhaps the most fascinating realization comes when we step back and look at the bigger picture. For years, many people dismissed these animals as little more than dusty decorations hanging in forgotten corners. Yet the deeper we look, the more we find hidden beneath that simple image. A skilled hunter, a patient observer, a participant in a complex ecosystem, a creature carrying millions of years of evolutionary solutions within a body that most people ignore. And there is still one final piece of the story left to uncover, because understanding what the daddy longlegs does is only part of the journey. The real surprise comes when we realize what its presence says about the world around us. By now, the daddy longlegs may seem very different from the creature most people imagine when they spot one hanging in a garage corner. What began as a dusty shape against a wall has slowly revealed itself as a hunter, a survivor, a parent, and a participant in an intricate web of relationships. But perhaps the most important lesson has very little to do with the daddy longlegs itself. It has to do with the way we see the world around us. Most of us move through familiar places without looking too closely. We walk into garages, sheds, basements, attics, and storage rooms with a specific purpose. We grab a tool, we move a box, we open a door, then we leave. These spaces become part of the background of daily life. We stop noticing them. Yet nature never stops. Even in places we consider ordinary, countless lives continue unfolding every hour of every day. A tiny moth enters through a gap beneath a door. A beetle searches for shelter among stacked boxes. A spider builds a new strand of silk between two forgotten objects. A daddy longlegs waits quietly in the shadows. None of these events seem important on their own, but together they form something remarkable, a living system existing alongside our own. The fascinating thing is that this hidden world does not require a remote jungle, an untouched forest, or a distant mountain range. It exists right beside us, sometimes only a few feet away, sometimes directly above our heads, sometimes in corners we have passed hundreds of times without a second glance. And that realization can completely change the way a place feels. Once you begin noticing these details, the ordinary starts to become extraordinary. A simple web is no longer just a web. It becomes evidence of patience, engineering, survival, and adaptation. A tiny insect flying through a beam of light becomes part of a larger story. Even silence begins to feel different. What once seemed empty now feels alive. Not crowded or chaotic, but quietly active, filled with processes that continue whether anyone is watching or not. There is something strangely comforting about that idea. In a world that often feels fast and noisy, these small, hidden ecosystems operate according to rhythms that have existed for millions of years. The daddy longlegs hanging in a garage today is following patterns shaped over countless generations, long before the garage existed, long before the house existed, long before humans built walls, roads, or cities. The creature adapts to our spaces, but its story began long before us. In many ways, we are simply temporary neighbors, sharing the same environment. And perhaps that is why these animals deserve a little more attention than they usually receive. Not because they are rare, not because they are dangerous, not because they possess some extraordinary superpower. Quite the opposite. They matter because they remind us how much life exists in places we overlook. They reveal that nature is not separate from our daily lives. It is woven directly into them. Every garden, every backyard, every garage, every forgotten corner contains stories waiting to be discovered. The daddy longlegs is simply one of the easiest invitations into that hidden world. The next time you see one, you may find yourself pausing for a moment. Instead of immediately reaching for a broom, you might wonder what it has been doing during the night, what insects it has encountered, what vibrations it has felt through its web. How many unseen interactions have unfolded around that small corner while the rest of the house slept? The answers may never be fully known. That is part of the beauty. Nature does not reveal everything at once. It rewards curiosity. The more closely you observe, the more layers you uncover. And beyond every answer waits another question. A garage corner becomes a miniature ecosystem. A web becomes a sensory network. A familiar creature becomes something far more interesting than it first appeared. Suddenly, the world feels larger without changing at all. The walls are the same, the shelves are the same, the dusty corners are the same. Only your perspective has shifted, and sometimes that is all it takes, because the natural world is not hiding from us. Most of the time, it is simply waiting for us to notice, quietly continuing its work in the background, building, hunting, communicating, adapting, surviving, life unfolding within life, story within story, layer beneath layer. So, if you ever find a daddy longlegs hanging peacefully in your garage, consider leaving it where it is. Not because it needs your protection. It has been surviving quite successfully for a very long time, but because it offers something increasingly rare. A chance to glimpse the hidden world that exists right beside our own. A reminder that even the most ordinary places can contain unexpected wonder, and that sometimes the creatures we understand the least are the ones with the most fascinating stories to tell.